The story opens with a scene that immediately establishes tension and heartbreak. A small, fragile girl is being abandoned in a dense, shadowed forest by the very people who were supposed to protect her, her parents. They leave her in a clearing, her small hands clutching a worn doll as the cold wind bites through her thin clothes. The parents, cold and merciless, justify their actions with selfish reasoning. Perhaps they believe the child is a burden, or they are motivated by greed, planning to gain financially from leaving her behind. Their departure is abrupt and cruel, leaving the girl stunned and disoriented, unable to comprehend why her own family could turn against her so easily. The forest itself becomes a character in this part, echoing the girl's feelings of fear and isolation. Towering trees block the sunlight, casting long shadows that seem to move like dark, looming figures. Every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig triggers panic, as the girl's imagination fills in the unknown with threats. The description of the environment emphasizes both her vulnerability and the harshness of the world she is suddenly thrust into. She has no tools, no shelter, and very little food, and the reality of her abandonment is crushing. Despite her terror, the girl's instincts for survival begin to emerge. She cautiously explores her surroundings, learning to distinguish safe spaces from dangerous ones. She finds a small stream and drinks the water carefully, aware that her life depends on it. She scavenges the ground for edible berries, mushrooms, or nuts, developing an early resourcefulness born of desperation. Even in her fear, there are moments of quiet observation, where she notices birds, squirrels, and other woodland creatures going about their lives. These moments, though small, provide a spark of hope and connection in a world that feels overwhelmingly hostile. The emotional weight of this scene is central. The girl's feelings of confusion, sadness, and betrayal are deeply human, and readers are invited to empathize with her. The story delves into her inner thoughts, her longing for her parents' return, her attempts to rationalize why she was left behind, and her quiet, nascent determination not to give up. It is a moment of transition, from a life of dependency to the harsh reality of self-reliance, where she must navigate survival without guidance. In addition to physical survival, Part 1 explores the psychological impact of abandonment. The girl experiences waves of despair and fear, punctuated by moments of fragile hope. Memories of happier times with her parents flash through her mind, contrasting sharply with her current predicament. These memories heighten the emotional stakes, showing both the loss she has suffered and the resilience she must develop to endure. Readers begin to sense the inner strength forming within her, an essential seed that will grow as the story progresses. The narrative tone is somber but imbued with a glimmer of hope. The girl's vulnerability and courage are highlighted simultaneously, making her an empathetic protagonist. By the end of Part 1, she is alone but alive, frightened but aware that survival will require both cleverness and bravery. The forest, initially an intimidating place, begins to feel like a landscape that could shape her, teaching her lessons in self-reliance, patience, and observation. It is in this crucible of adversity that her character begins to emerge, laying the foundation for the transformative journey that will follow when the widower enters her life. The second part of the story shifts from the shock of abandonment to the first stirrings of resilience. The little girl, though trembling with fear and loneliness, refuses to give up. At first, every sound in the forest terrifies her: the hoot of an owl, the crackle of branches, the rustling of unseen animals. But as hours pass, she begins to adapt. Instinct takes over where despair threatens to swallow her. She starts by retracing her steps, hoping desperately that her parents might have come back for her. But the path quickly fades into wilderness, leaving her surrounded by thick undergrowth and endless trees. Tears blur her vision, but her determination drives her to keep moving. Hunger gnaws at her, and her throat feels parched, so she makes it her first mission to find water. Listening carefully, she hears the faint trickle of a stream and follows the sound. The relief she feels when she kneels down to drink is immense, a small victory that restores just enough strength to keep her going. Her body is frail, and she has no training in survival, yet her observations save her. She notices berries on a bush nearby. Remembering how her mother once warned her about bad berries in the woods, she hesitates. Carefully, she tests one, nibbling slowly and waiting to see if it causes harm. Hours later, when nothing happens, she eats a few more, enough to ease the worst of her hunger. This small act of caution shows her quick thinking and adaptability, qualities that will carry her through the darkest days. As night approaches, the girl faces a new challenge, the bone-deep cold. She gathers leaves and broken branches to form a crude shelter near the roots of a massive oak tree. It isn't much, but curling up under the branches gives her a sense of safety. She hugs her tattered doll tightly, whispering to it as though it were her only friend. In these whispers, she pours out her fears and hopes, her longing for warmth, her wish for kindness, and her faint dream that someone might come searching for her. It's here, in the midst of fear, that the forest begins to change for her. She notices that not all its sounds are menacing. The chirping of crickets, the rustle of rabbits moving through grass, and the soft flutter of wings overhead begin to comfort her. She even spots a curious squirrel that seems to linger nearby. Watching the animals makes her feel less alone, as though the wilderness itself is trying to reassure her that she is not forgotten. The animals become symbolic companions, silent but faithful, reminding her that life continues even in hardship. This part of the story is about the girl's first steps toward self-reliance. Though small and fragile, she shows an ability to adapt, a refusal to surrender completely to despair. Every decision she makes, finding water, testing food, building a shelter, is a declaration of her will to live. These survival skills don't just keep her alive. They give her confidence. She begins to believe, if only faintly, that she might endure even without her parents. At the same time, her inner battle remains intense. She cries often, haunted by memories of her parents' rejection. The betrayal runs deep, but she refuses to let it break her spirit. Instead, she starts to realize that she can no longer depend on them. This painful awareness sparks the beginning of her independence. She begins to understand that survival depends on her own courage, not on the love of those who abandoned her. By the end of Part 2, the girl has endured her first full night alone in the wilderness. She is exhausted, still hungry, and still deeply sad, but she has also proven to herself that she can fight for survival. She has taken her first steps into a world where her strength, patience, and ingenuity will define her fate. This fragile, trembling resilience lays the foundation for her eventual bond with the struggling widower who will soon enter her life. While the little girl struggles to survive in the forest, the story shifts focus to another character whose life is equally marked by hardship: the widower. His introduction is quiet, but deeply emotional, showing the contrast between his solitude and the child's. He is a man in his mid-30s, roughened by work, his face lined with exhaustion and grief. Once, his life had been full. He had a wife who laughed often and a small son whose footsteps filled the home with joy. But an illness swept through 2 winters ago, leaving him alone in a small, weather-worn cabin on the edge of town. Since then, he has carried on not because he wanted to, but because life demanded it. The widower works as a carpenter, repairing fences and crafting tools for neighbors in exchange for food, supplies, or a few coins. His income is meager, and most days are spent balancing long hours of work with the heavy silence of his empty home. Every corner of the cabin reminds him of what he has lost. The carved wooden chair his wife used to sit in, the small toy horse his son left unfinished, the faint echoes of laughter that now live only in memory. His grief hangs over him like a shadow, yet there is a quiet resilience in him. He continues forward, though his heart often feels hollow. The narrative highlights not just his sorrow, but also his kindness. Though struggling financially, he never turns away a neighbor in need. Once he gave away a handmade stool to an old woman who had no money but needed it desperately. Another time, he mended a fence for a farmer in exchange for nothing more than a loaf of bread. His generosity is not a sign of wealth, but of character. He cannot bear to see others suffer, even when he himself carries so much pain. Despite this, the widower is isolated. Townspeople respect his skill, but view him as a lonely, broken man. Some pity him, others avoid him, uncomfortable with the heaviness that seems to surround him. He feels this distance deeply but accepts it, choosing to keep to himself. His days fall into rhythm, work. Return to the cabin, prepare a modest meal, and sit in silence until exhaustion forces him to bed. It is during one of these solitary routines that the threads of his fate begin to intertwine with the little girl's. One morning, while gathering firewood in the forest, he hears rumors from travelers passing through. A child was seen wandering alone, abandoned, or lost. Some dismiss it as gossip, but something stirs in the widower's chest. The story lingers with him as he works, as though tugging at a part of his soul he thought had gone numb. He knows what it feels like to be left behind by life, to face the world with no one to lean on. The thought of a child enduring that kind of loneliness cuts him deeply, though he tries to dismiss the feeling at first. He cannot. A voice inside him whispers that he should search the woods, even though he has little to spare and no reason beyond compassion. His heart, long dormant, begins to ache, not with grief this time, but with a fragile sense of purpose. The widower does not yet know the child, but already, unknowingly, she is drawing him out of the darkness of his own despair. By the end of Part 3, the widower's introduction establishes him not only as a man scarred by loss, but also as someone capable of great love and sacrifice. His struggles make him relatable, his kindness makes him admirable, and his loneliness makes him the perfect counterpart to the abandoned girl. Both are broken in different ways, both longing for connection, and destiny is quietly guiding them toward one another. The widower's decision to search the forest sets the stage for one of the most pivotal moments in the story. The meeting between two souls, both abandoned in different ways, yet destined to find healing in each other. The scene begins in the hush of early morning, when dew still clings to the grass and the forest is heavy with mist. The widower carries only an axe strapped to his back, a bundle for firewood, and a piece of bread in his pocket. He tells himself he is merely gathering wood, but in truth he is listening intently, hoping for a sign of the child whose story had unsettled him. At first, the forest offers nothing but silence and the distant calls of birds, but then faintly he hears it, a soft sound almost like a whimper. He freezes, his heart suddenly racing, and carefully follows the noise. The closer he draws, the clearer it becomes, the muffled sobbing of a child. Pushing through the underbrush, he comes upon a small clearing, and there, huddled against the roots of a great oak tree, is the little girl. The sight strikes him deeply. She is filthy, her face streaked with dirt and dried tears, her hair tangled. Her arms are wrapped tightly around her knees, and beside her lies a worn doll with a missing button eye. She looks up when she senses movement, and her eyes widen in terror. To her, another adult figure means danger, another possible betrayal. She scrambles backward, pressing herself against the tree trunk as though it might swallow her whole. The widower stops several feet away, lowering his axe to show he means no harm. His voice is gentle, low, and careful. "It's all right, little one," he says, keeping his distance. "I won't hurt you." He reaches into his pocket and pulls out the piece of bread, laying it on the ground between them. The girl stares at it with suspicion and hunger warring in her eyes. For a long moment, neither moves. Finally, the smell of the bread overwhelms her resistance, and she snatches it, eating in quick, desperate bites. The widower watches her with a pang in his chest. He recognizes the raw fear, the mistrust. He knows it because he has lived with his own form of it. Fear of losing again, fear of opening his heart only to have it broken. Still, he feels a pull toward her, a tenderness he hasn't allowed himself to feel since his wife and son died. He tries to speak again, asking her name, but she remains silent. Only her eyes speak, wide and filled with both defiance and sorrow. He doesn't press her. Instead, he sits down a safe distance away, showing her that he can wait, that he won't force her to trust him. Hours pass with them in that clearing, the girl watching him warily, the widower quietly carving a piece of wood with his knife. At one point, he sets the carving down where she can see it. A small figure of a bird, simple but beautiful. Her gaze lingers on it, curiosity flickering for the first time. As the sun begins to dip low, He knows he cannot leave her there. He rises slowly and says, "I'll be coming back tomorrow. You can stay here if you like. I'll bring more food." His voice is steady, but inside he prays she will let him help. He leaves the carving beside her as he walks away, a token of goodwill. That night, the girl clutches both her doll and the wooden bird, torn between mistrust and a fragile spark of hope. For the first time since being abandoned, she feels that maybe someone sees her, not as a burden to be discarded, but as a child worth caring for. The first encounter does not end with full trust, but with a fragile bridge built between them. It is the moment where loneliness meets compassion, where despair begins to give way to possibility. Both characters walk away changed, the widower with a sense of purpose stirring in his chest, and the girl with a flicker of belief that maybe, just maybe, she is not alone anymore. The first meeting leaves both the widower and the little girl unsettled, but forever changed. For the widower, the memory of her frail figure clutching that doll and wooden bird lingers in his mind long after he leaves the forest. For the girl, the stranger's calm voice and quiet patience feel different from the coldness she has known. Yet trust is not born overnight. It must be built carefully, piece by piece, like the widower's carpentry. This part of the story focuses on how two broken souls, one scarred by loss, the other by betrayal, begin to forge a bond strong enough to reshape both their lives. The next morning, true to his word, the widower returns. He carries a small basket with bread, dried meat, and a wool blanket. When he reaches the oak tree, he finds the girl still there, sitting stiff and wary. Her doll rests in her lap, the wooden bird beside it, a sign that she has not rejected his gift. That detail fills the widower with a quiet hope. He does not rush her. Instead, he sets the basket down within reach and steps back. She eyes the food with suspicion, then eats in quick, cautious bites, never letting her gaze leave him. When she finishes, he simply says, "There's more where that came from." His words are soft, not demanding, not expecting anything in return. Over the next days, he repeats this ritual. He brings food, clean water, and little tokens, small carvings of animals, each left near her shelter. A rabbit one day, a fox the next. Slowly, the girl begins to anticipate his visits, though she never admits it aloud. She still keeps her distance, still refuses to speak, but she no longer hides when he arrives. She watches him with those large, searching eyes as if testing his patience. One afternoon, the widower tries something different. Instead of approaching directly, he sits a few yards away and begins working on a piece of wood, shaping it into something new. The steady rhythm of his knife scraping the grain fills the silence. Curious despite herself, the girl creeps closer, step by step, until she can see the shape emerging, a small horse with carefully carved legs. When he finishes, he places it on a rock and leaves it there, walking away without a word. When he returns the next day, the horse is gone, and in its place is a small wildflower, wilted but deliberately set. It is the first gesture of trust she offers, and it nearly brings tears to his eyes. The breakthrough comes gradually. One evening, as he sits by a fire he built near her shelter, she speaks a single word. "Why?" Her voice is hoarse from disuse, but the question is clear. Why is he helping her? The widower's heart clenches at the sound of her voice. He answers honestly, "Because no one should be alone." It is not a grand promise, just a simple truth, but it carries the weight of his own loneliness. From that point, the girl begins to speak in short phrases, revealing bits of her story. She does not yet confess the full cruelty of her parents, but he pieces it together through what she withholds. He listens without pressing, offering her the dignity of choosing when and how to share. The girl learns that his silences are not threatening, but safe spaces where she can gather her courage. Trust also grows through small routines. He teaches her how to set simple snares for rabbits, how to identify safe berries, and how to weave branches into stronger shelters. She learns quickly, eager to feel capable after being treated as a burden. For her, each new skill is a step away from helplessness. For him, teaching her is a step back toward purpose, filling the emptiness left by his own child. By the end of this part, their bond has shifted from tentative coexistence to the beginnings of true companionship. The girl no longer sees him as a stranger to fear, but as a protector who asks for nothing in return. And the widower, once resigned to loneliness, feels a fragile flame of hope rekindling in his heart. Trust is still fragile, but it is no longer impossible. They are not yet family, but the foundation has been laid just when the widower and the little girl begin to find a rhythm in their fragile new bond. The outside world intrudes. Trust and healing are still delicate, like a sapling just sprouting, but now external forces threaten to uproot what they are building together. This part of the story introduces conflict, not from nature, but from people whose selfishness and suspicion endanger the pair. The first threat comes from whispers in town. For days, the widower has been spotted heading into the forest with baskets of food and blankets. At first, the townsfolk assume he is simply hunting or gathering wood. But then someone, a nosy merchant, claims to have seen him speaking with a child among the trees. "What business does a lonely widower have with a strange girl?" The merchant sneers over ale at the tavern. The comment sparks gossip, and soon the town buzzes with speculation. Some say he has taken in a wild orphan. Others whisper darker suspicions. In a community quick to judge, his reputation as a reclusive, sorrowful man makes him an easy target for suspicion. The widower senses the shifting glances, the muttered words behind his back when he visits town for supplies. He feels the weight of judgment pressing on him, though he refuses to abandon the girl. Instead, he resolves to protect her more fiercely, ensuring she remains hidden from prying eyes. But the greater danger comes from the girl's parents, the very people who left her to die. Their decision to abandon her had been motivated by greed. Perhaps they had debts to pay or mouths to feed, and they saw the girl as expendable. When word reaches them that their daughter might have been found alive, they are not moved by guilt or relief. Instead, they see an opportunity. If she survives, she could be used, perhaps to gain sympathy from wealthy relatives or as leverage in a scheme to extract charity from the townsfolk. Their sudden interest in reclaiming her is not born of love, but of selfish intent. The widower learns of their approach when a farmer, sympathetic to him, warns, "I heard her kin are asking questions in town. Best be careful. They're not the kind to care about her well-being." This news chills him. He has seen the girl's haunted eyes, the way she flinches at the mention of parents, and he knows that sending her back would destroy the fragile healing she has begun. But legally and socially, he has no claim over her. If the parents arrive demanding her return, the townsfolk might side with them out of fear of scandal or adherence to law. Meanwhile, the girl senses the unease. She notices the widower's tense shoulders, the way he scans the forest more carefully, and she grows frightened. For the first time since meeting him, she asks directly, "They won't take me, will they?" Her voice trembles, and he answers with quiet firmness, "Not if I can help it." In that moment, the bond between them deepens, no longer just trust, but loyalty. She clings to him not as a stranger who brings food, but as the protector she desperately needs. The tension escalates when a group of townspeople confronts the widower. They demand to know why he has a child hidden in the forest. Some accuse him of trying to steal her. Others claim he is using her to mask his grief. The widower, though outnumbered, stands firm. "She was abandoned," he says, his voice steady. "If you'd seen her, cold, starving, left with nothing, you'd understand why I couldn't walk away." His words cut through the suspicion for some, but not all. By the end of Part 6, the external threats loom larger than ever. The girl's parents are drawing nearer, their intentions poisonous. The townsfolk's gossip threatens to undermine the fragile sanctuary the widower has built. Both he and the girl feel the world closing in around them. Yet within that pressure, their bond hardens into something stronger, a shared determination to stand together, no matter what danger comes. After the shadow of threats begins to loom over them, the widower and the little girl find themselves clinging to the only certainty they have: each other. This part of the story explores how their bond transforms from fragile trust into something deeper, true companionship, love, and healing. The external dangers have made both aware of what is at stake and in response, they grow closer, finding strength not just in survival but in the comfort of belonging. The widower begins to invite the girl more into his daily routines. Instead of simply dropping off food in the forest, he brings her into his cabin on colder nights. At first, she is hesitant, standing in the doorway as though stepping inside would be a betrayal of her independence. But the warmth of the hearth and the smell of stew cooking on the fire coax her in. She sits by the fire, stiff and guarded, while he stirs the pot, saying little. Over time, these silences become comfortable rather than tense. The steady crackle of burning wood, the clink of bowls on the table. These small domestic sounds begin to feel like home. The girl gradually opens up about her past, though in fragments. One evening, she admits in a whisper that her parents often told her she was a burden, too small, too weak, too much trouble. The widower listens without interruption, his jaw tightening but his voice gentle when he finally responds. "You are none of those things. You are strong, stronger than many grown folk I've known." His words strike her like sunlight breaking through clouds, simple, but filled with the kind of affirmation she has never known. In return, she gives him pieces of her heart in other ways. She begins to help him with chores, fetching water, sweeping the cabin floor, or holding nails steady while he hammers. Her laughter, soft, tentative at first, returns when he accidentally drops a hammer on his boot and mutters under his breath. That laughter surprises them both, a sound so rare that it feels like a miracle. For the widower, it is a reminder of joy long buried. For the girl, it is proof that happiness is possible again. Nature, too, becomes part of their healing. They take walks through the forest together, where he teaches her the names of trees and birds, passing on the knowledge his father once taught him. She learns quickly, delighting in being praised for her cleverness. Sometimes they simply sit in silence by the stream, throwing pebbles and watching the ripples spread. In these quiet moments, their wounds, his from loss, hers from betrayal, begin to feel less sharp. The widower also finds himself sharing memories of his late wife and son. At first, speaking of them is painful, but as he tells stories about how his son loved chasing grasshoppers or how his wife hummed while she cooked, his voice softens. The girl listens with wide eyes, asking gentle questions. She does not judge his grief or pity him. She simply listens, giving him the same gift he gave her, the chance to be heard. In her presence, the silence of his cabin no longer feels suffocating. A subtle but powerful transformation takes place in this part. The girl begins to call the cabin home. She refers to the widowers. Meals as our food, his tools as our work. The maba pronoun shift is small but meaningful. It signals that she no longer sees herself as a guest or an intruder, but as someone who belongs. And the widower, though he never asks for it, begins to be seen as something more than a protector. He becomes her father in every way but name. By the end of Part 7, both characters are stronger than before. The widower, once resigned to loneliness, rediscovers joy and purpose. The girl, once abandoned and broken, learns that love can be steady, safe, and unconditional. Their healing is not complete. Shadows of fear still linger, and external threats still loom, but for the first time, both believe in the possibility of a future together. In each other, they have found not just survival, but family. The peace the widower and the little girl have built is fragile, and in this part, it is shattered when the threats hinted at earlier erupt into direct conflict. Their bond has grown strong, but it must now be tested against forces determined to tear them apart. The trouble begins with the return of the girl's parents. They arrive in town not with shame or regret, but with self-righteous anger. Rumors have already reached their ears. Their daughter is alive, cared for by a man who is not her kin. Rather than gratitude, they respond with indignation. "She is our blood," they insist to anyone who will listen, twisting the truth to paint themselves as victims of cruelty rather than perpetrators. They claim the widower has stolen their child, keeping her for his own selfish purposes. The townsfolk are divided. Some who have watched the widower's quiet kindness over the years doubt the parents' sincerity, but others, wary of scandal and fearful of meddling in another family's business, begin to pressure the widower. "She's not yours," one neighbor warns. "If they want her back, the law will side with them." The whispers reach his ears, each one a dagger. He knows the truth, that sending her back would mean condemning her to neglect and misery, but he also knows he stands on fragile ground. The confrontation comes suddenly. One evening, as the sun dips low, the widower returns from chopping wood to find the girl's parents standing outside his cabin. Their faces are twisted with greed and false outrage. The girl, who had been gathering herbs nearby, freezes in terror at the sight of them. Her mother calls her name sweetly, a tone dripping with false affection, while her father glares at the widower with open hostility. "Give her back," the father demands. "She is ours. You have no right to keep her." The girl shrinks behind the widower, clutching his hand so tightly that her knuckles whiten. Every tremble of her small frame speaks louder than words. She does not want to go. The widower feels the weight of her trust pressing into him, and for the first time in years, his heart burns with fierce protectiveness. He answers with steady defiance. "You abandoned her. I found her starving and alone. A parent who leaves their child to die forfeits their right to her." His words hang heavy in the air, carried by the raw honesty of lived pain. The father lunges forward, furious, but the widower steps between him and the girl, gripping his axe handle, not to strike, but to show he will not yield. The mother wails, attempting to play on the crowd that has begun to gather nearby. "He's poisoned her against us." She's confused, poor child. She belongs with her real family. But then, something unexpected happens. The girl speaks. Her voice is small but steady, trembling yet resolute. "I don't want to go with you. You left me. You didn't want me." "He did." She looks up at the widower with eyes full of tears, but also fierce determination. "He's my family now." Her words silence the crowd. For the first time, the truth cuts through the parents' lies. The townsfolk murmur among themselves, questioning the parents' fitness and recalling stories of their neglect. The widower feels a swell of pride and heartbreak all at once. Pride that she has found her voice. Heartbreak that she had to endure such pain to speak it. The confrontation reaches its climax as the father tries to seize the girl by force. The widower blocks him, standing tall, his voice like iron. "If you want to take her, you'll have to go through me." For a tense moment, violence seems inevitable. But the crowd, stirred by the girl's words and the widower's bravery, steps in. Neighbors who once doubted now speak out, condemning the parents' cruelty. "You left her," one woman spits. "We all know it. She's better off here." By the end of this part, the confrontation has shifted the tide. The widower and the girl are no longer isolated. The community has begun to recognize the truth. Though the battle is not entirely won, the law still lingers in the background. And the parents are not finished. The widower and the girl stand together, united, their bond forged stronger than ever by the trial of fire. The confrontation has left the air thick with tension, but now comes the resolution, the moment when truth, justice, and courage determine the little girl's fate. Both she and the widower have stood their ground, and the community has witnessed their bravery. Still, lingering doubts remain. Will the law side with blood ties, or will compassion and truth finally prevail? After the heated clash outside the cabin, the town elders are called upon to mediate. In this rural community, disputes are not settled in distant courts, but by the wisdom of respected figures, men and women whose authority stems from years of service and moral standing. A meeting is arranged in the town square, where all sides may speak. The widower dreads the day, knowing the girl's parents will twist the truth, but he resolves to stand tall for her sake. On the morning of the gathering, the girl clings to him tightly, her small hand hidden in his calloused one. She whispers, "Don't let them take me." Her fear is palpable, but so is her newfound courage. He kneels, looking into her eyes, and says softly, "I'll fight for you, whatever it takes." That promise steals them both as they walk into the square, where townsfolk already murmur and the parents stand waiting with feigned indignation. The proceedings begin with the parents' accusations. They paint themselves as victims of circumstance, claiming they left the girl only briefly, intending to return but somehow losing her. The father insists the widower took advantage of their hardship. The mother sheds crocodile tears, lamenting how her child was stolen. Some listeners frown in skepticism, but others exchange uneasy glances. After all, parents usually have the strongest claim to their children. Then the widower speaks. His words are simple but powerful. He recounts how he found the girl starving, trembling in the woods, left with nothing but a doll. He describes her struggles, her slow recovery, and her courage in speaking out against the very people who abandoned her. His voice cracks when he says, "No child should beg to be wanted. She begged me with her eyes that day, and I could not turn away. If you send her back, you condemn her to the same cruelty that nearly killed her." The girl herself, though nervous, insists on speaking. With a trembling voice, she tells the truth. How her parents called her a burden, how they walked away without looking back, how she thought she would die until the widower found her. Her words pierce the crowd like arrows. Many who once doubted now lower their heads in shame for having questioned her. The elders deliberate. Some argue that blood ties should not be dismissed lightly, but others counter that parenthood is proven not by birth but by care. After long discussion, the decision is announced. The girl will not be returned to her parents. Their abandonment has disqualified them, and the widower, though not of her blood, has shown himself to be her true guardian. The verdict is met with a swell of relief and even applause from some townsfolk. The parents, enraged and humiliated, storm away, their greed thwarted. For the widower and the girl, the resolution brings more than legal safety. It brings recognition. No longer do they have to live in hiding or secrecy. Their bond is validated not only in their own hearts but in the eyes of the community. Neighbors who once whispered suspicion now offer quiet nods of respect, and some even bring small gifts, bread, blankets, or tools, as tokens of support. Most importantly, the girl's fears ease. That night, back in the cabin, she whispers before sleep, "They can't take me now." The widower strokes her hair gently and replies, "No, little one. You're safe. You're home." It is a moment of profound relief, where the weight of fear lifts, replaced by the quiet certainty of belonging. By the end of Part 9, the conflict has been resolved. Justice has prevailed. The parent's cruelty has been exposed, and the widower has been affirmed as the girl's rightful guardian. Yet the resolution is not merely legal, it is emotional and spiritual. The little girl, once discarded, has been chosen. The widower, once hollow with grief, has found new purpose. Together, they have turned pain into a foundation for family. The conflict has ended, and the town has spoken. For the first time since her abandonment, the little girl can breathe without fear of being taken away. Yet Part 10 is not only about safety, it is about healing, growth, and the slow blossoming of a new life built on trust, love, and hope. The widower wakes early the morning after the ruling, sunlight streaming through the thin curtains of his cabin. For years, mornings had been empty, the silence of a house once filled with laughter, the ache of grief gnawing at his heart. But now, he rises to the sound of small footsteps padding across the wooden floor. The girl, still clutching the patched doll he once mended for her, greets him with a sleepy smile. That smile alone makes the years of loneliness seem worth enduring, because it led him here. Life begins to settle into a new rhythm. The widower continues his work as a carpenter, but now he has a helper. The girl insists on learning, holding nails steady with tiny, careful fingers or sweeping sawdust with determination. She beams with pride whenever he praises her efforts. In the evenings, they share meals by the fire. Sometimes she tells him stories about the woods, about the fear that haunted her nights. Other times, she sits quietly, content simply to be near him. Slowly, her nightmares lessen, replaced by dreams of safety. The townsfolk, once skeptical, begin to embrace the pair as family. Women from the village bring her ribbons and dresses their daughters have outgrown. Children invite her to play, though she clings nervously at first before joining in. And when people ask whose child she is, the widower answers simply, "Mine." with no hesitation. Those who hear it see the truth in his eyes. Healing, however, is not instant. Some nights the girl wakes crying, convinced her parents will return. Each time the widower gathers her into his arms, whispering gently, "No one will take you. You are safe here." Over time, those reassurances plant roots in her heart, slowly replacing fear with trust. She begins to laugh more freely, to run barefoot in the grass, to sing softly to herself, things she had forgotten how to do. For the widower, the change is just as profound. He once thought his life had ended with the loss of his wife, destined to wither in solitude. But through the girl, he rediscovers joy. She draws him out of his grief, reminding him of the warmth he thought forever gone. In her eyes, he sees not only the child she is, but also the father he has become. His home, once silent, now rings with laughter and life. Seasons pass. Spring brings flowers that the girl picks to decorate the cabin. Summer brings long days of fishing by the river, where she squeals in delight at her first catch. Autumn brings harvest festivals, where she clings to his hand among the crowd, but smiles with pride when he introduces her as his daughter. And winter, once lonely and cold, becomes a time of shared warmth by the hearth, their bond unshaken by the storms outside. The story closes not with grand gestures, but with quiet certainty. One evening, as the fire crackles and snow falls softly outside, the girl looks up at him and asks, "Will you always stay with me?" He smiles, brushing her hair back gently, and answers, "Always." The promise is simple, yet it carries the weight of everything they have endured. In that moment, the circle is complete. The child once discarded has found love, and the widower once broken has found purpose. Their new beginning is not perfect, but it is real, and it is theirs. Out of pain, they have forged a family. Out of abandonment, they have found belonging. Out of despair, they have built hope. And so the story ends, not with an ending at all, but with the beginning of a life they will share, day by day, heart by heart, for as long as they both shall live.